To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
As we wait for the spot market to take a positive turn, we watch for signs within the monthly and quarterly numbers. Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation joins us to look at the third quarter trends. Lawmakers are now calling out the rampant problem of broker fraud in the trucking industry. Representative Bost of Illinois made a point to bring up the topic during a recent hearing in the U.S. House. We'll cover that in another Landline Roundtable discussion with Jamie Jones and Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine. And finally, New Mexico is taking a close look at problems along a large section of Interstate 40 in the state. Summer Herrera of the New Mexico DOT will join the show to talk about the study and what it found. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. You might remember the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration earlier this year opening the door for waiver requests on previous decisions to preempt meal and rest break rules in California and Washington. 4 organizations, a state, and 1 individual have taken FMCSA up on that offer. The agency says it received petitions for waivers from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, the Truck Safety Coalition, Citizens for Reliable and Safe Highways, Parents Against Tired Truckers, the state of California, and William B. Trescott. California and Washington both have rest break laws that are more stringent than those required by FMCSA. FMCSA has several questions for those interested, including whether and to what extent enforcement of a state's meal and rest break laws has impacted the health and safety of drivers or truck parking shortages, and whether enforcement will dissuade carriers from operating in the state. A comment period on the petitions begins next week, the day after Christmas, and runs for 60 days. For more details, check out our story on landline.media. Another holiday weekend means another weekend of abnormal traffic patterns. AAA estimates that more than 115 million people will be traveling between now and January 2nd, but some days will be busier on the roads than others. And although the roads generally are less busy on Christmas Day, dashcam and fleet management company Netradyne says statistics show that drivers are 120% more likely to get into an accident on Christmas Day compared to the rest of the year. Netradyne says less congestion leads to more distracted driving and more speeding, which then leads to more crashes. The federal government says your job is one of the most dangerous in all of the nation. That is, if you're a truck driver. In a new report, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says among all civilian occupations, the drivers of heavy trucks and tractor trailers are killed the most often. According to the data, 934 truck drivers were killed on the job last year. That's up about 7% compared to 2021. The numbers line up with fatal crash data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Overall traffic deaths went down in 2022 compared to the previous year, but fatal crashes involving large trucks went up 2%. Representative Kevin Kiley of California once again is calling on President Biden to withdraw his nominee for Labor Secretary. Julie Su was nominated for the post in February and went through a confirmation hearing in April, but her bid did not come up for a vote in the full Senate, which sent her nomination back to the White House this week. She's been serving as acting Labor Secretary. In a news release, Representative Kiley said Sue's nomination has lasted nearly 300 days now, the longest a cabinet-level nominee has waited without a floor vote when the same party controls the White House and the Senate. The congressman said it's clear that Sue will never win confirmation, and if she remains at the helm in an acting capacity, every action the Labor Department takes will be under a legal cloud. Representative Kiley has been consistent in his opposition to Sue. This is what he had to say during a House subcommittee hearing late last month.
Today, I am again calling on President Biden to end the tenure of the now longest-serving acting secretary in United States history. The president must nominate a secretary who will perform his or her duties competently, who will be on the side of American workers, and who can win Senate approval. Only then will the Labor Department be free of the legal uncertainty that currently clouds its important work.
Much of the opposition in Congress towards Sue stems from her role in the implementation of California's Assembly Bill 5, a controversial law that makes it extremely difficult for a worker to be considered an independent contractor. A U.S. representative from the state of Missouri has signed on to 2 trucking-related bills in the House. Congressman Mark Alford is now the 32nd co-sponsor of the DRIVE Act, which would prohibit FMCSA from imposing a speed limiter mandate on heavy trucks. And he's also the 44th co-sponsor of the bipartisan Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, which would allocate $755 million over 3 years toward the construction of free, publicly available truck parking sites. New details tonight into last month's deadly chain reaction crash in Ohio involving a semi, charter bus, and several other vehicles. 6 people were killed, including 3 teenagers. A new report from the National Transportation Safety Board says the truck driver being blamed for causing the crash did not slow down for traffic caused by a previous accident on Interstate 70. A previous report from the Ohio State Highway Patrol found that the trucker was following too closely and failed to slow down prior to striking another vehicle and then hitting the charter bus. These are initial findings for now. The crash remains under investigation. Another round of yellow properties has been auctioned off. 23 additional terminals were purchased this week for a total of $83 million, according to a filing in a Delaware bankruptcy court. Estes Express Line spent the most money, purchasing 5 terminals for a total of $35 million. Saia bought up the most properties, though, 11, totaling just under $8 million. This was a second round of auctions for yellow properties. 130 properties were gobbled up during the first round for nearly $2 billion. This isn't the end, though. Yellow still has several dozen terminals that need to be sold off, along with even more leased properties. And the sale of tens of thousands of yellow tractors and trailers through auction houses is ongoing. Iowa has extended bird flu emergency declarations for 2 counties. The state began issuing bird flu-related emergencies in late October, with 7 counties ultimately covered. The most recent extension covers Sioux and Taylor counties and will remain in effect through January 24th. That means that folks hauling loads related to the emergency response effort won't have to worry about hours of service requirements, with some exceptions. Meanwhile, Iowa's statewide harvest proclamation, first enacted in September, has been extended again as well. The emergency now remains in effect until January 11th. Commercial vehicles transporting certain agricultural products on highways within Iowa are allowed to be overweight without a permit. The emergency, however, does not apply to the interstate system, and loads cannot exceed 90,000 pounds gross weight or the 20,000-pound maximum axle weight. Louisiana drivers, listen up. A commercial vehicle ban is now in effect for a stretch of Interstate 20 east of Shreveport amid a construction project. The Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development had been strongly urging truckers to simply keep away from the I-20 construction zone, but changed their tune when discovering that the current traffic configuration and narrow bridge lanes made it hard for commercial trucks to get through. Signs are posted. Commercial trucks are now being detoured to I-220. Commercial drivers caught on the I-20 construction zone may be issued a citation. And finally, kudos to a father and son in Kansas for coming to the aid of a truck driver and potentially saving his life. In a social media post, the Sherman County Sheriff's Office in Kansas said a truck driver suffered a medical emergency and blacked out on Interstate 70 this week. The man's truck veered into the median at highway speeds. Deputies say the farmer and his son were traveling that same stretch of roadway, noticed the driver in need of help, and jumped to action, literally. With the semi still moving but slowing down, the son jumped onto the truck, hoping to get inside, but the passenger side door was locked. Using a hammer, the son broke through, crawled into the cab through the window, and stopped the semi. An amazing story of bravery, and best of all, the driver is okay, according to the sheriff's office. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation joins us to look at the third quarter trends in the freight market. We'll cover broker fraud with Jamie Jones and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine, and Summer Herrera of the New Mexico Department of Transportation joins us to discuss a study of the I-40 corridor in the state. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back to Landline Now. Our next guest has been on the show numerous times over the past year, bringing us updates about the state of the spot market, and he's back with another. Let's see if there are any silver linings on the horizon as we look back at the third quarter numbers. Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation joins us now with the details. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Always good to see you. Always appreciate having you here, I should say. So we're again looking at third quarter numbers here. And you've got them broken down into categories, and I kind of want to walk through the report in that way because I think it kind of paints a picture as we do that. Let's start with volume. Actually, we will start with volume here. You're using data from C.H. Robinson to figure out kind of where we stand, which I thought was interesting, and You've done this before. Can you just explain exactly why that is? Why are you looking at C.H. Robinson in particular and kind of using their numbers as a gauge?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is a little bit different from our monthly market update, which will be coming out here very soon, where that one is primarily looking at equipment type, so van and flatbed and reefer, and it's also looking primarily on a monthly base frequency. And so this report is different in that it's focusing more on type of operation, and it is looking at a quarterly view. So that is actually more accurate, even though it's a little bit slower. It's a little bit, it's obviously lagging a little bit more than a monthly report, but because of that, it can be more precise. And so we're looking at different types of operations. So looking at owner-operators under their own authority and what's going on out there in the freight market for them in particular. Well, a good way to look at that is to look at C.H. Robinson. And the main reason is they are basically the largest broker out there. They handle like $30 billion worth of freight a year. So they have a great visibility into what's going on in the market today. And one of their big customers, of course, is owner-operators. So this is a great proxy to understand what's going on out there in regards to volumes and revenue and things like that. And so that's why we're taking a look at truckload volumes through C.H. Robinson's quarterly report.
And it does, like I said, I do think it paints a pretty clear picture of where things stand, especially when you look back over recent quarters and recent years. You've got graphs throughout this entire report kind of showing the ups and downs. We've seen a lot of downs over the past several quarters, sadly.
I shouldn't laugh.
All we can do is laugh at this point because it's better than crying, I suppose. But it is interesting looking at this. And I kind of want to take these one by one, as I said there. We'll start with owner-operators in particular. And let's talk about volume now. Down again in the third quarter, and down really has been the trend again for the past year and a half or so. Can you put this into perspective for us on exactly what we're seeing here with the numbers?
So, like you mentioned, decline 5 out of the last 6 quarters. So obviously that is a pretty significant trend, something that we're not necessarily unaware of. Obviously, we've talked about it in the monthly market update, but truckload volumes decreased 3% quarter over quarter to negative 6.5%. So as you mentioned, if you do download the report and you look at it, you will see that there is this line that's going across showing the 0% mark, and it really matches very well with what is going on in trucking over the years. And so when this is down, obviously that impacts everything.
Yeah.
And so this is a big thing to watch for, to see. Hopefully it's starting to bottom out and tick up, and that would be a good indication of, hey, the market is starting to turn, it's starting to flip, and we can get a little bit more excited.
And I think it's interesting, too. I obviously have seen graphs before here and there, but it's interesting looking at these in particular and just with volume in particular, too, because you do see the trends over a long period of time, right? Things go down for several quarters for the most part, usually. And then when things start to go up, I mean, they go up. It's not like a up and down, up and down, up and down, right?
Exactly.
So in that hopeful tone that you brought there, Andrew, I'm looking at the line right now, and it's been shooting not straight down, but pretty close for the past several quarters, as you mentioned there. But at some point, and we keep talking about this, 2024 looks like at some point during the year, we're going to see all those
It
lines
should start
to
to switch, yes.
It should, yeah. No promises, no guarantees there.
Correct.
But, we've been talking about volume, but of course, low volume means low revenue, and that's also evident here in the chart and the information from C.H. Robinson as well.
Yes, and so we look also at truckload net revenue per quarter, what C.H. Robinson received, and we see that it has declined 45% basically, which obviously is pretty big. And looking at year over year, it's been down the last 2 quarters. And so you can really see, you can kind of pinpoint when that downturn really started. And that actually is important because it helps us to understand where it might turn based on previous cycles. So most cycles might last, anywhere from 20 to 21 months or so, somewhere around that area. And so we're getting kind of to that point, or we will in 2024. And I think what's also important about this is people were expecting things to turn around really quickly.
Yeah.
What happened during the pandemic was very abnormal.
It was very atypical.
Exactly. And so I think the regression to the mean has been so shocking, and people were expecting it to bounce back a little quicker than it has, and it hasn't. And one thing, kind of what you mentioned before, what helps with these charts and the reason why there's not so much bouncing up and down with the being more volatile is because it's looking over a longer period of time. It's 3 months opposed to 1 month. So it cuts out some of that noise and lets you get a really quick grasp of the bigger picture.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That was certainly, obviously, during the pandemic, a very atypical time. In terms of downsides or whatever you want to call it, downturns, this is pretty typical, historically speaking, with other downturns that we've seen in the markets, right?
Right.
So, again, with that in mind, if it is typical, we're going to start to see some sort of recovery here in the coming months, hopefully sometime in 2024.
Hopefully sometime at least I would hope by second half of 2024, that it's demand that really drives everything. And so with certain sectors of manufacturing being down, in fact, when you look at manufacturing as a whole, that area of the economy has been in a recession because it has been down over the last few quarters. And that really is what we need to see is some uptick in certain sectors of that manufacturing. And that's really what's going to boost it, which will help move us into the next upcycle. And it probably is not going to be like the last two. So the last 2 upcycles were like one-off events that really just shot it upward. COVID, obviously,
like a rocket ship,
and before that was the different hurricanes mixed with the ELD mandate. Those happened at the same time, and well as some of the trade wars or tariff wars with China. All that stuff really kind of pushed freight up really quickly, and that's really not normal. Normally, it's more of a slow grade, and I think that's more of what we'll see in the next one, which is good to know. It's not going to be, and all of a sudden, someone just turns on the water and a flood comes. But
well, I mean, based on the past few years, who knows what's going to happen, right? We went through.
That's true. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen, and we'll see what happens in 2024. But again, some hope there for sure. We've been focusing on owner-operators here so far. Things, I want to say, look a little bit better for leased-on owner-operators. Maybe not a whole lot better, and I'm not even sure, as I'm saying that, if that's actually completely factual. Is that about accurate? A little bit better for leased-on owner-operators.
Yes, I would say for the most part. We're talking generalities, someone listening might be saying, no, absolutely not. But depending on what carrier you're leasing onto, contract rates have been fairly high, as we've shared about in previous episodes when we talk about the monthly report. And so it's not unusual or uncommon when things like this happen that members lease onto a carrier during those downturns because it does save a lot of the costs. Like the insurance, obviously, is a big, massive one. And there are some benefits being under a carrier, maybe something like fuel discounts and things like that, though we do have a fuel card, I would say. But regardless, so in that sense, it probably is looking better for a leased-on owner-operator than one under their own authority, because some of the costs are taken away and also the revenue is going to be a little bit higher. And you kind of alluded to that, and you can see that in the last slide on this section. And this report is much shorter than the monthly report, just putting that out there for anyone who's interested. But you'll see that the revenue per load has already hit the bottom and is actually starting to tick up a little bit. So be interesting to see what happens in the fourth quarter. But that is giving a more positive view than what we have had in other episodes.
Yeah, and we've talked about the monthly report, and we've talked about things to look for, right? We signs that maybe we're turning a corner here. This one in particular, and you mentioned this slide in particular, where you do see the revenue per load now starting to creep up. Is that any sort of indicator that maybe we're starting to turn a corner, or does that have nothing to do with the other thing?
I would say not necessarily, not really. It just goes back to the contract rates that right now there still are, when you look at replacement rates, it hasn't fallen as much as you would think. And I wonder if some of that is shippers are still waiting for it to fall further, and they don't want to lock in a rate when they could get a lower rate if they just hold out a little bit longer. And the consensus is, we still have a little ways to go. So I would say it's more due to that than something positive down the road.
We talk about weathering the storm. We've been talking about it again for quite a while now. You've got owner-operators. We've got leased-on owner-operators, maybe a little more security there, as you were kind of alluding to. And then we talk about company drivers, where there is a lot more security, I guess, again, generally speaking here.
Yeah.
And this report you have here, this quarterly report, looks at company drivers as well. Any takeaways there that kind of stand out to you, or is it kind of more of the same?
It's more of the same, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of obviously they'll be a little bit more protected depending on where you're driving or what carrier you're driving for, but they are also seeing some of that hurt. Just the amount of freight out there in the quality of freight is just not the same.
Yeah. So to kind of tie this all up here, we've had a less than optimistic, a less than awesome 2023, I guess, for a number of reasons. Every time we talk, I feel like I'm always asking you for some silver lining, or are we turning the corner, or when's the storm going to finish? Those kinds of questions. But I think the takeaway here is we're almost there. I don't know if we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's almost like we can sense it, I guess.
Yes.
And so I think maybe the message here as we close things out here for the last time in 2023 is hold on a little bit longer. I know it's been a struggle out there for so many people, and we understand how difficult it's been. But we are, hopefully, all the signs seem to be pointing toward a brighter 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it will happen. We know that because that's just how the cycles work. It will turn up, as much as maybe sometimes we don't believe it just because of how bad it is. But yes, and there are some good indicators. In the monthly report, you'll see that there was really strong housing numbers for November, and typically this is more of a slower time of a year. So it outperformed what the expectations were by a lot. And that is a good sign because, as we've talked about before, housing starts is a good generator of freight in general. So that could help get some of the manufacturing sectors going, perhaps. And, as we've seen, even just this retail sector, this is usually a de-season, right, for that. And it has performed fairly well. And so those are good signs, but it's going to take a little bit more. But like you said, I think there are some positive signs happening, and we're also getting to that typical trend of when that cycle starts to turn, just in terms of length.
Yeah. When we do this a year from now, and we're looking back on 2024, I feel like we're going to be much more uplifting and have a lot more good news to kind of piggyback off of. Andrew, always a pleasure. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation. You can check out that quarterly report for yourself and any number of other reports they put out at ooida.com/foundation. We're staring down another break here on Landline Now, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Welcome back. We've been waiting patiently for action on the increasingly serious broker fraud problem, and Congress is now making calls for action as well. We'll get into that, plus some other issues floating around in the industry with the help of Jamie Jones and Mark Schrimmer, both of Landline Magazine. Mark, Jamie, good to see you.
Hey, happy to be here, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So before we get going, I want to highlight Representative Mike Bost of Illinois. We've talked to him, or have talked to him before, and hear from him quite a bit. He made comments recently during a hearing earlier this month within the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And I talked earlier about losing patience with regard to broker fraud, and this is what the Congressman had to say, followed by FMCSA Administrator Robin Hutchison's response.
I've heard a lot of motor carriers right now that freight fraud is involved really bad with scammers. And let me tell you how this works. We have people who are out there that are claiming to be brokers. The truck drivers are out there trying to find loads, or their companies are trying to find loads for them. They use this broker. The broker all of a sudden comes in, it gets in the middle of the supply chain issue, and they broker the load. Now, by the time that driver then gets back in, or that company gets that load back in and ready to be paid for, they contact that particular company, and they are no longer in existence, or you can no longer find them. Is there anything that your agency is doing and can be dealing with as far as the fraud that is occurring out there? Because we're losing a tremendous amount of smaller companies and or owner-operators, because it's one thing if a great big company takes a $2,000 loss or $5,000 loss, but the smaller companies can't take that.
Representative, I appreciate your experience in the industry. We unequivocally share your concerns about the impact of fraud on the industry, and specifically broker fraud. We are taking steps. First and foremost, we issued a financial responsibility rule that will ensure security limits for brokers and freight forwarders is increased to $75,000. We know that's not enough. We are also taking steps to improve transparency in transactions. We've been listening to our stakeholders, working very closely with OOIDA, TA, and others. Thank you for
Thank you. My time.
So, Jamie and Mark, we finally reached the stage where Congress, it seems, is fed up with this broker fraud problem, as well as you heard there in the voice of Representative Bost, which I take as a positive in a way, because now we're getting more pressure on FMCSA to do something about this. And hopefully we will see something about it.
Yeah, and first let's maybe give a little credit to Representative Bost, who, as we know, has a background in trucking. His family has run a trucking business for years. He's been a champion on the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. So he was able to relate and really kind of, I think, in that quote that we heard, kind of break it down of what's happening to these trucking companies, and also explaining to the administrator how this is negatively affecting small trucking companies. And as the administrator has said many times, that they're trying to do everything they can to stop truckers from leaving the industry, because they have all the data that says the truckers that stay in the industry the longest are the safest ones out on the highway. This is another example. They get caught up in this broker fraud, which we're seeing estimates of $800 million annually that's coming from this. And so, like I said, a ton of credit to Representative Bost for bringing this up as part of the hearing, and really, making sure that at FMCSA is planning to do something about this issue that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, it always amazes me when they sit there, and she even acknowledges the $75,000, Administrator Hutchins.
Yeah.
Anyway, she acknowledges that $75,000 isn't even enough still in this day and age. And I remember it wasn't too terribly long ago, we were looking at $10,000 on a broker bond.
Yeah.
And the problem is, you can have any amount under the sun, really. You could have $100,000, $200,000, whatever. But once that bond is gone, it's gone, and anybody else who's trying to make a claim against it is left out in the cold. And so I think that's what's so important about what OOIDA is doing, that, we're acknowledging these baby steps. At least we're to 75,000, but I think it's important to note that OOIDA is relentless on this issue, that these are merely steps they are taking, but it's not the solution to the entire problem yet.
And it's going to take a lot of solutions because it is such a big problem. We do have a final rule on financial responsibility, right, taking effect in January, which is a step in the right direction. We spoke earlier in the week about OOIDA's petition, essentially asking for more, which makes sense because, again, more needs to be done here. But we are heading in the right direction. We are seeing some progress. And FMCSA, as we have talked about before, does acknowledge this issue, does realize it's a problem. The question being, what is it going to look like when they do end up tackling this, and how long is it going to take? And that's kind of OOIDA's stance in all of this, right?
Well, and Jamie, you probably know, more on this than I do from the background, but I know, like, even this financial responsibility, this goes all the way back to MAP 21, right? Which is 2 highway bills ago. That's a long time ago to even move forward on this. And then you look back on OOIDA, petitioned FMCSA all the way back in, I think, May of 2020 about the broker transparency issue. The good news was this past March, they granted that petition and said we're gonna make a rulemaking. But then here in recent months now, we're seeing that notice of proposed rulemaking won't actually come out until, I think, Halloween of 2024 is the...
Yeah, will it be a trick or a treat, too? So, I mean...
And will it even come out at that point?
Yeah.
We don't know.
So, I mean, it's one of those things. It's this issue. We're seeing all these problems. I'll give some credit to Administrator Hutchison for saying some of the right things there, as Jamie alluded to, mentioning that 75,000 isn't enough and that more needs to be done. But this is something that, this petition, like I said, really originally came out in, mid 2020, and now we're talking about, we might not even have anything moving on a real form of a proposal until almost 2025. That's just not acceptable. I mean, with all of the issues that are going on.
Yeah, it's really not, because I mean, if you look at it, and there's always problems in the broker side of the industry. I mean, just like any other career or profession out there, there's always bad apples. So, but we have definitely seen an influx, an increase in broker fraud, and double, triple brokering, all kinds of just illegal behavior,
shenanigans.
I love it. Yeah, let's not put a legal term on it. But that's what makes this transparency so important, because that would give these small motor carriers the ability to see that food chain of money, if you will, and see if there is some double and triple brokering going on in there, and that maybe this load isn't really worth what originally it would have been had so many people not grabbed something off for merely taking an electronic data file and moving it from one computer to another. I mean, that's literally all the work that these brokers do in a lot of cases.
And I know Congress isn't known for being speedy by any means, but I do wonder if maybe that is part of the solution here as well. Obviously, Representative Bost is paying attention to this. There are other legislators who have paid attention to this as well. I wonder if at some point, maybe down the line, if FMCSA continues to maybe drag its feet, maybe we're going to see some sort of action legislatively. I don't know. I mean, is that even an option? I don't know. But we're heading in the right direction.
One thing that I think has to be said, I know it's been repeated before, but I think it can't be emphasized enough. This broker transparency regulations are already on the books. I mean, all that OOIDA is petitioning for is really simple. It's just basically for FMCSA to enforce existing regulations and to close the loopholes. So that's not something, in my mind, that should take 5 years.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, it has. And let's
fact.
hope it doesn't take another 5 years, but we'll see what happens there. I want to shift gears here real quick to another rulemaking that's lurking, as I said earlier in the week, to Jay Grimes of OOIDA. I don't think it's getting as much attention as maybe it deserves here. This is with regard to FMCSA's proposed regulatory framework regarding the operation of commercial motor vehicles equipped with automated driving systems. Rolls off the tongue there. That could be released soon, real soon, in fact, Mark, and this is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it has been, sent to the White House Office of Management and Budget, OMB, as we often say. And so, but the thing is, so it's under review right now. I think the target date is just a general December 2023. Right now, we still haven't seen actually what's all in this framework. But before the year's over, we may have a better idea of how the agency plans to move forward regarding all of these companies wanting to do more and more with automated driving systems.
We can always be hopeful because we don't have a good idea of what's in this rulemaking yet. And what we see going on is states are kind of taking the bull by the horns on this right now, and they're setting their own rules on what these automated, autonomous trucks, whether they have to have a safety driver, don't have to have a safety driver, blah, 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 what roads they can be on. And so you're coming up with a patchwork of regulations. And then, to make matters even worse, it's unproven technology in most cases. They're self-reporting problems to this day. We've got recalls on different autonomous systems. We've got investigations into different autonomous systems going on.
A lot of investigations.
Yeah, there's so many questions and so much doubt hanging out there that FMCSA has the best opportunity to come in and put a national framework on this that really clamps down on this wild west of autonomous trucking that we're seeing evolving right in front of our faces.
Yeah, and again, this rulemaking is about the safe deployment.
Sure.
And if you're looking for safety and you're looking at these autonomous systems, which I know, supporters will say is going to make roads safer, well, maybe eventually. Yeah. But we're very far away from that destination. So we'll see. I think that's a good point, Jamie. What does hope feel like? Because I'm not familiar.
I don't know. I don't play the role of Pollyanna well.
Okay,
I'm just saying that they definitely have the opportunity to come through with something that really does ensure highway safety and a smart rollout of this technology. Because frankly, if we can't keep a smartphone going for more than a couple days without having to reboot it, Mark's computer went down yesterday for no good reason. I mean, it's just computer technology is not foolproof, and that's what these are going to run off of.
We shall see, and we'll see pretty soon here. As I said, in the coming weeks, we'll get probably something from the Office of Management and Budget after
Hopefully
they review that
on
rulemaking.
Holiday and
that's also true. Yes. Hey, real quick, we got about a minute here. I know we're looking ahead to 2024. I just wanted to ask you real quick. We've got a ton of rulemakings coming out, a ton of proposals flying around right now. 2024. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but what are you kind of most focused on in terms of rulemakings? What has kind of got your attention right now as we look ahead to the coming months?
Well, obviously the one that I think that when you look back of last year that you had 15,000 comments on from truck drivers was the speed limiter rulemaking.
Ring the bell. And that was my prediction.
Yeah, and we're again, December of this year is their target date. It has not hit the White House OMB like the automated driving. So I'm not expecting to actually see it before the year's over. But sometime in 2024, I expect to have a notice of proposed rulemaking that would include a top speed. Yeah. And if we had 15,000 comments last time, I would hope for at least 30,000 this next time.
Double it, yeah.
Yeah, same with you.
Yeah, it's the big one. But I mean, there's just the regulatory plate is full, and it is
full.
It is so full, and it's a presidential election year coming up, so it's just going to be a busy year, and we'll just have to stay on top of all of it, frankly.
And we will, and we'll bring you those updates as we can. Jamie, Mark, appreciate it as always.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
You can check out Mark and Jamie's work on the Landline.media website, and in every issue of Landline magazine. We've got a short break coming up fast, but stick around. Much more show to go. Landline now returns in just a moment.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. New Mexico is taking a close look at a large section of Interstate 40 running through the state, determining the problems they face along that stretch with an eye toward possible solutions. Summer Herrera is a project development engineer with the New Mexico DOT. She spoke with me recently about the study and what it found. Why did the New Mexico DOT undertake the study of the I-40 corridor?
Yes, the NMDOT initiated the I-40 corridor study in order to better understand the changing conditions along the interstate. We needed to determine corridor needs and develop a long-range plan for this portion of the corridor. So we did this through data collection and analysis to understand where and why improvements are needed, the factors and existing conditions that are contributing to safety and operational challenges. Next, we developed and evaluated alternatives to meet these identified needs and future traffic demands. And ultimately, we will be developing a highway improvement plan, which will help the DOT prioritize improvements and streamline future projects.
Okay. Who conducted the study?
The NMDOT is the lead agency conducting the study, and we do have oversight and funding being provided by the Federal Highway Administration. It's being conducted in coordination with key stakeholders, including area tribes, federal, state, and local agencies. Some of the key government agencies we've been working with include the Mid-Region Metropolitan Planning Organization and Northwest Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and we've also been working with area tribes like the Acoma, Laguna, Navajo, Zuni, and Bureau of Indian Affairs. Other key stakeholders we've been reaching out to include the New Mexico Trucking Association, elected officials, and the public. We're working with a team of consultants to complete the study. The lead consultant is Parametrics, Inc. They're managed out of their Albuquerque office, and they've hired other experts around the state, including Bohannon, Houston, Horrocks, Terracon, and Lee Engineering.
Okay. Now, I know that it didn't cover the entirety of I-40 through the state. What part of I-40 was covered by the study, and why did the DOT choose that particular part to take a look at?
Sure. Yeah, that's correct. So this I-40 corridor study covers 150 miles from the Arizona state line at milepost 0, continuing to Albuquerque at milepost 150 at the Atrisco Vista interchange. We also did consider the alternate routes, frontage roads adjacent to the section of I-40. This particular portion was chosen to be studied due to increasing challenges and backups and number of incidences, and that was why it was chosen to be studied.
Okay. What are the primary problems or concerns that the study found with that section of the road?
Yes, a lot of traffic backups in this corridor are occurring, primarily caused by lane closures that may be taking place due to construction, maintenance, or crashes. And occasionally there are complete closures of the travel lane, so that's causing quite a bit of backups. Reducing to one lane anytime is problematic during daytime hours. Also, crashes have been increasing, and fatal and serious injury crashes are higher than state averages for similar roadways. Particularly, crashes with heavy commercial trucks have increased from about 1/3 of crashes to half of the crashes since 2016. There's also multiple deficiencies, including pavement deterioration, geometric issues with ramps, shoulders. There's some flooding going on along the corridor, and 4 bridges that are in poor condition and need of repair. We are finding that when both lanes are open on I-40, without lane reductions, the corridor does have sufficient capacity in most of the areas until 2050 and beyond, although there are some needs for additional lanes in more of the urban areas and needs to improve the ramps. So a combination of improvements are needed, operational enhancements, policies, procedures, and some building.
Okay. The study identified 4 alternatives for the I-40 corridor, and you mentioned a couple of them there in your answer. I'm wondering if you can go over those alternatives that were identified by the study.
Sure. So we're mainly looking at 2 alternatives and comparing it to the baseline of not building anything. So those alternatives are an enhanced 2-lane with added lanes, and the second alternative is a 3-lane alternative. What I mean by enhanced 2-lane is that we would widen the shoulders to 12 feet on both sides in both directions. So currently these shoulders are only about 4 feet or 6 feet, depending on the location. So widening them would give us some extra room to manage lane closures if they occur. And then, of course, providing a 3rd lane where it's needed, for example, Gallup and other locations on grades. It's being designed with the 3rd lane in mind. Like I mentioned earlier, past 2050, we might see a need for a 3rd lane. We're not completely sure. That's just too far in the future to be very certain about the growth that is expected. And there could be changes with like autonomous vehicles and freight movement. So we're keeping that in mind and having the ability to pivot and implement a 3rd lane should it be needed. So like I mentioned, the widened shoulders will allow 2 lanes to be provided during construction or other lane closures. This would also address geometric, drainage, bridge, and pavement deficiencies, and we're looking at where we can implement other infrastructure such as crossovers to facilitate those types of special setups. The 3rd lane alternative is very much the same, but with a 3rd lane being constructed for the full 150 miles.
You mentioned earlier operational enhancements, and the study did look at several of those. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about those in more depth.
So the operational enhancements are improvements that will improve operations and reliability. This includes intelligent transportation systems, or ITS. This would be improving data collection systems to provide ongoing traffic volume and vehicle classification data so that the DOT can monitor the corridor over time and adapt to changes if needed. This would also improve real-time information provided to travelers on the road regarding incidents, weather, construction zones, and parking, establish a fiber optic cable backbone for the entire corridor that would support these ITS needs. Also, an operational enhancement is minimizing lane closures during construction and maintenance. So that would be developing and implementing policies and procedures to maintain 2 lanes in each direction through construction zones and trying to limit any lane closures. Improving alternate routes. So if there is ever any significant incident, there is opportunity for traffic to take alternate routes. Right now, there are some issues where vehicles are not able to utilize the alternate routes, such as bridge clearances. So this would look at identifying those spots where we need to improve them some more, and also improving incident management. So this would include new legislature to allow NMDOT to support law enforcement in moving crashed vehicles from the roadway, provide traffic management, and improving first responder coordination and training.
Okay. What is the next step now that the study is out?
The study is actually not published yet. It's currently being reviewed by the DOT and the Federal Highway Administration. It will be published after our agency's review is complete. The presentation that NMDOT gave to the Legislative Subcommittee on November 13th was a preview of initial findings and recommendations. We'll actually be conducting a 3rd public meeting in early 2024 to provide an update to the public on the study, obtain feedback on our preliminary alternatives and recommendations. So we expect this study to actually be completed in early 2024. The next public meeting will be held virtually, so if anyone interested can join virtually, and more information on the public meeting is available at the study website at i40nmstudy.com.
Okay. Is there anything else about this that you think is important for people to know?
Just that the DOT does want the public involved, and we do want to hear your feedback, and any interaction with our project website, i40nmstudy.com, is appreciated.
That was Summer Herrera, a project development engineer with the New Mexico DOT. That's our show for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.